Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Libby Book Club. I'm your host, David Allan-Petale, and tonight my guest is Louise Wolhuter, who's the author of Shadows of Winter Robins. Louise, welcome to the Libby Book Club. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And before we start, just like to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting to you from the traditional lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, of course, tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Overdrive Australia, Libby, and the State Library for WA. It's free. This is our little bookie corner where we can host authors in our very own lounge rooms on our computer screens and all come together for our love of books. It's a great thing. And of course, Shadows of Winter Robins is available on Libby free with no holds. You should have no trouble downloading it, provided you have the Libby app, which I hope you do, because you're here. But it's available for the next month, totally for free, and you can enjoy all of Louise's words. And Louise, just like to start by also just reminding everybody, this is not just my chat with Louise, this is our chat. Everybody can jump into the chat tonight and ask Louise any question you like, but I do have a request. Uh, no spoilers, please. Shadows of Winter Robins is well, dark and twisted tale that gets even more twisted the further you go in. And if you've read to the end, you'll know what I mean. If you're halfway through, you've got a bit of a roller coaster coming. And if you're just starting, well, follow the breadcrumbs because nothing is as it seems. Usually with a crime novel, maybe we would do some spoilers, but I think this is a bit of a different beast. I think, Louise, we were saying, this is like M. Night Shyamalan. We don't want to
Yeah.
we don't want to give away. So if you do have a question, though, Louise has very kindly offered to answer if you privately message her through social media. So
It's only the spoilers, though. Any questions you're
any other
apart.
questions? Yeah, of course.
But
And
yeah,
any other questions? We do also have a signed copy of Shadows of Winter Robins to give away tonight to, I think, the most interesting question, the one that sparks the most conversation. So without further ado, Louise, my first question is, how are you? Because you're on a bit of a high. Very recently, you won Book of the Year for at the West Australian Premier's Writing Awards for Shadows of Winter Robins. How are you feeling? That's an incredible endorsement of your writing. This is book two for you.
it's exciting. Yeah, I'm still settling. I'm still coming down off it. But it was a massive surprise. I didn't. I was. It was a surprise enough to be shortlisted. That was just fantastic. And then on the night, I thought, well, I'm obviously not going to win it. I'm just going to go have a great time. And then I started thinking. You start thinking, well, maybe I might. You never know. And then the first person to win a prize got up and she had a speech ready. So I thought, oh, they've obviously told the winners because you hear sometimes that
Yeah.
sometimes winners hear on these awards, don't they? So I just thought they'd already told the winner. So it was a massive surprise. Them I might have done a little bit of a swear, but only in my seat and not on the stage.
What did you say in your
Oh,
speech?
oh I thought what
Yeah,
was that swear word?
well, you can tell us that. That's
Get
okay.
on with
We've had
it.
Old Shepherd on before, more like a sailor. That's fine.
No, I think I just bumbled my speech to be honest, but I did all right. It was okay. I think I thanked the right people eventually.
Uh, Indeed, indeed. Now, Louise, could you tell us in your own words what is Shadows of Winter Robins about? That's an extraordinarily large question, but what would be your, I suppose, your succinct explanation of what your book's about?
Um, well, it's the story of Winter Robbins, who at 9 years old is sent from her home in the north of England to live with her mother's estranged and rather unconventional family who live in Western Australia. In the prologue, we meet Winter as an adult, going into the first of what will be 10 sessions with a psychologist slash counselor slash therapist. We're not really sure. Well, you're not sure, I'm sure, who she is or why Winter's there. But those 10 sessions provide a thread, form one of the threads of the story. The rest of that, or sort of, I suppose, framed by that, is the story of Winter piecing things together from her past. It's about unreliable memories, looking back and seeing different things from different angles. It's about belonging versus fitting in, I suppose. There's a quote towards the end of the book. I think it's Nanny who says, "We don't cast all of our shadows. Sometimes it's our shadows that cast the shape of us." And it's about that. I suppose it's really about Winter looking into her shadows or the shadows around her, and some of them get quite dark in the corners. Does that answer?
That's beautifully said.
Alternatively, you could just read the back of the book. I think it's all.
No. The thing I'd like to ask you about is that I suppose the first third of the book is really when we're exploring Winter's childhood, particularly in England, when she's looking at everything, she's remembering back, but everything's seen, it's very childlike. Everything's very distinct, and she's someone who really observes. Can you describe for us what Winter is like as a child? She's a very observant child, very sensitive, but also she's attuned to the adult world in a way perhaps other kids aren't.
Yeah, I think, and I do think when you, I suppose, when things do happen to you as a young child, you do get a bit savvy to the world around you, perhaps a little bit more prematurely than other people would than you would have done otherwise, I suppose. She's quite, as you say, attuned to the world. She's her parents, her mother dies very early. It's first chapter, I think, so or second chapter. So I'm not no big spoiler there. And then her father doesn't cope very well with that. So the grandmother's pulled in to help a little bit. So it's she's trying to sort of still be a child and continue to not cause a problem and not rock the boat and not put any more pressure on anybody else in her world. And yet it still changes around her. And I do think that I think I reference this in the book or mention it, but we talk about children being adaptable and they just know that they have no choice, really. I think I see it a lot, well, not a lot in schools, but I think anyone who's worked around kids or families, you do hear a lot of parents or adults saying, oh, don't mind, they're not listening, or they don't know what's going on, or they don't really understand it. And yet those same parents are often in therapy for the things that they were assumed to not have understood when they were children, or they're trying to iron out things that were caused by things that happened when they were children. So I think that we assume a little bit too much, maybe, that things from childhood don't affect the children around us when we're the adults, but we're still all hung up about things that happened to us when we were children ourselves.
It's a great answer. And there is that almost a frustration in that you can see the adults trying to hide things from Winter or uh her mother dies and the community wraps around her, but people don't particularly want to speak to her about it directly or acknowledge it. Everyone was trying to smother it in a way, but no one ever
And
really.
that's often how it is, or how it was. I mean, now I suppose they talk a bit more about things. We're more attuned to explaining things at a child's level, but I think also it's not always that things are hidden. It's just that you don't see them as a child because you're not looking for them, and even as an adult, you're not looking for them. I remember, this is completely unrelated, but it made me think of it. I remember going to a club once with a friend of mine in London, and it was a gay club, and which was fine. We'd been to plenty before. And I looked around and I said to my friend Jamie, I said, everybody looks like Freddie Mercury. And he said, Louise, Queen. And and it had never, I'd just
uh,
never seen. Do you know what I mean? And it
yeah, yeah,
was like I hadn't had,
funny.
I wasn't around gay people. It was just, I had not made that connection because at the time when I was listening to the music, I just didn't have that broadness of breadth of understanding or experience. And it's a bit, we see what we want to see sometimes. And I don't mean that in a blinkered fashion, although I
Oh, yeah.
suppose sometimes it is. I mean that sometimes you're just not looking for that. You've got stories of, and you might have a story of your father coming home with a tummy bug when you were a child. And if you speak to your older sister, she's going to go, really? Do you think it was a, and then you go,
Just
yeah.
hung over. It's like, oh yeah.
And we all have dozens of stories like that of things when you realized, I mean, we
Yeah.
all look at Jimmy Savile and go, really?
Yeah, how did
What?
that happen? You're like, oh, hang on. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. God. Can you tell us about Winter's family when we first meet them? Because it's Winter. She's got a brother four, her father Lou, and of course her mother, who's radiant. But there's also you describe her as loving them as though this will be the last time. That every time she hugs them at the bus stop, it's as though there's a piece of her that's breaking off. She's someone
The
who,
mother.
yeah, loves them very dearly.
Yeah, yeah. She does. But it's sorry, I was distracted. My daughter just came home, took a look and thought, oh shit, I'm supposed to go around the other way. So I apologize for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Nancy feels that things are finite. Um, and I don't know, maybe she would think that it's things are just too good to last. And I mean, without giving too much away, there are things that then, would come out later on that you would perhaps attribute to that feeling that she has, or that sense she has of things not being as permanent as she would perhaps like them to be. But I think also it's Winter that's telling that story. It's Winter that's remembering that, and again, she's remembering that with the benefit of hindsight, knowing that actually it wasn't permanent. It was going to end. It was, she remembers it because it's not there forever. And I think when you do lose somebody, you exercise that memory very early on in life, and you remember things from earlier than perhaps somebody else would, because I think your memory's it's a muscle, isn't it? And if you have cause to remember being 3 when you're 5, you'll remember that memory of being 3. But if you don't look back at 3 until you're 8, you're going to remember a lot less than the person who had cause to look for those memories when they were 5, if perhaps they'd lost, as Winter does, if she's lost Nancy, although she doesn't lose Nancy till she's a bit older than 5. But
Louise, when you first started writing Shadows of Winter Robins, did you anticipate playing with memory so much and playing with the timeline and finding these shadows, these crooks that you could go into, as in nooks and crannies, or did you write it was it straight and then it revealed itself?
no, it's a good question. But I, from the beginning, with Winter, I wanted it to be a story about memory. Um, I don't tend to think of a story as such. There'll be a character that I want to explore and develop, and there'll be an idea, I suppose, a kind of a what if this happens, and they'll find each other, and the story will be born. But the character, I wanted somebody to come to WA. I wanted somebody to come to Australia. I wanted to sort of think about how that would be as a child, and in order to do that, to push that to as far as I could, it required them to come alone, insofar as not with any adult. So with another child was fine, but not with any adult accompaniment. I didn't want anybody coloring anything for them, so they could, form their own opinion. And then the what if for me really was, what if you look back and realized as an adult, looking back on something, that, oh, actually, something else was completely going on there. And I had a friend of mine who, shall be unnamed, told me a story once about, he looked back on his childhood, and his house was always full of boxes, and there was always lots of things there was a back room nobody was allowed to go in, and they never thought anything of it until they found out that Dad was fencing stolen goods for all their childhood. That's where the money came from. But of course, and I rather liked that sort of idea, that you're looking at a story where you're looking back at something, or your narrator is looking back at something and piecing it together as an adult.
Oh, I love that. I love that. We've got a great a comment here from quite a few people. Helen's from Coffs Harbour. She says, "I love the book, and twists is so accurate." Thank you, Helen.
Thanks,
And
Alan.
Charlotte Vincent's also saying, "Hello, I just finished reading the book yesterday, and I found it very intriguing." Well, if anyone has a question, kind of spoiler free, please jump in. But the if this is
Everybody's
just
going to be scared.
can I talk to you a little bit about setting as well? And it's Northern England, but also in Australia, and it's also all based on memory. This is probably a bit of a geeky observation, but I love that it wasn't like starkly set in a particular era that was easily identifiable, in the sense that it's multiple generations of people all together, and everyone has all these different influences, and there's different technologies all overlapping each other. It wasn't stereotypical. It felt very real, and through the language, through the observations of the characters, all the different ages coming together. Was that deliberate, or is that just something that you're blessed with it being able to do? It wasn't.
I think it was a deliberate. I tried to make it real as opposed to make it sound awful. The time's hard at the moment because, we've got COVID in there. So if
Yeah,
you set anything contemporary, you have to avoid
yeah,
those a couple of years, because you just can't do it without mentioning COVID. And then COVID becomes part of the story. So I
yeah,
had to kind of nudge it to before COVID. And then it was really just a case of, I think, backing it up a bit. I grew up in the north of England. I grew up actually in Harrogate, where the book's set.
yeah.
So that is my hometown, and Knaresborough, and all those places, and the Wetherby Road, and I kind of redesigned it a little bit, and I changed the names of the estates and the pubs so I didn't upset
Yeah.
anyone. But that was a no-brainer because if you're going to remember a childhood, you may as well dip into your own a little bit. The house that Gran's house is actually my own grandmother's house, although I made it a two-story. And I kind of melded it a wee bit with the street that I grew up on. But the green in the middle, the width of the street, that's my grandma's street. Um, and then I'm trying to think, what was the rest of the question? Now I've forgotten it. Oh, bringing it over here.
Yeah, bringing it to Australia. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some of the references that I needed from the era because I wasn't here back then. I have a very good friend, Aisha, who is my token West Australian native, born and bred, and I text her random questions if there's something that I don't quite um, get, or I'm not sure if especially the vernacular, if it's something that I think that's Yorkshire, that can't possibly be, that wouldn't be the same here, and I'll message her and say, okay, just completely randomly. The other day I did, and I said, what do you call a moorhen over here? And she said, I've never even heard of one, so I had to send her pictures. They'll be, or I'll say, best thing since. And she'll have to reply because I think, well, maybe it is sliced bread, but maybe sliced bread is an English thing. And sometimes I'm not sure if I've got it right, but ask people, I suppose.
That's great. That's great. Well, we've got some questions for you now, Louise. So from Charlotte Vincent, she's saying, why the name Winter? I know in the book that Nancy has said she just liked the name, but why did you, as an author, choose such a peculiar name?
It wasn't Winter to start with. The book originally was called All Winnie Sykes Was Not, and her name was Winnie Sykes. That was her name. She was going to be Winnie for Winifred, and Gran was Welsh. And I didn't like the title, and the publishers didn't like the title, and we really tried to work it. There was a lot of texting between myself and my editor Robert Watkins on. I'd say, what about this, and we'd go, what about that, and in the end I decided I liked Winter. We thought we needed Winnie because went through the whole book. This character is called Win or Winnie, so it would have been far too difficult because it was a very late stage, far too difficult to change the name to something else completely. It would require so much. I would have missed something by the time you got, the full name, the abbreviated name, the possessive pronoun of that. It would just have been awful. So I went through it and I thought, everything, Winona. So I had Winona, great, it's going to be Winona, we'll just call her Win. And then checking against the dates, Winona Ryder's first movie, I think, was, I'm wanting to say Heathers. Was it Heathers? Anyway, it came out the year after I think Winter was born. So again, okay, if I have Winona, I have to change the dates of everything. So that's not going to work. And then I found that Winter, it is a name. It is a name. I did a lot of research. So we thought, and then it lent itself rather nicely to a better surname. So for about 3 weeks on the fridge, I had Winter Rooks, Winter Lark, and Winter Moss. They were on the fridge, and it was going to be Shadows of Winter Moss, Shadows of Winter. Actually, it was The Shadows originally. And then the final one, we went with Robins because we thought Robins were rather nice. It's a nice surname. And then there's a snow globe in the book, which originally has Viking ship. It has a Viking ship because it comes from York. So it had a Viking ship in the snow globe. So all I needed to do was tweak a little bit, put a couple more references in, change the Viking ship to Robins. And it lent itself really nicely. So yeah, it wasn't Winter Robins to begin with, but I rather like it now. Oh, and then before it came out, I was in the supermarket and I was at the checkout, and the lady next to me was telling her daughter off, and she was saying, Winter, do this, Winter. And I looked like a stalker. And in the end, I approached her and I said, your daughter's name is Winter. So I swapped details, and she sent me a nice message when the book was published. So that was good. But yeah, so there is a Winter here in Perth somewhere.
We have proof. That's great. And sorry, we're getting a few queries just saying people had difficulty logging into Zoom. Sorry about that. I also had a bit of difficulty, but that was all my fault. But thank you for persisting, and it's great to have you with us. We've got an observation. Emma Bliss is saying, I loved it too and immediately wanted to start it again and see all the pieces with the understanding I have now. I haven't reread it yet, but I will after this. Great book. Best one I've read for years. I'm also from the UK and now living in WA, so that was a great connection point for me too. I suppose building on that, if you have been through the book, you will see all the pieces, but was it interesting for you as an author to leave the breadcrumbs, but also to defy people's expectations? Because you led me down a path and then it went the other way. I wasn't expecting it to go that way.
I hope so. It's difficult to do without it being. You don't want it. You don't want the reader to feel tricked or deceived. They want. I suppose you want the payoff. You want to feel like you've earned it as a reader. I certainly do. I want to know that the it was everything was there for me. Should I have seen it? I don't want you to see it, but I think when you go back through, I hope there's a little, it's quite fun going back through it and going, it was, or trying to catch me out, I suppose. But there's also that worry that you miss something as a writer. You think, God, what if something's wrong? What if I miss something? The editors were really nice. They would put a little note in. There's a couple of them, they'd say, I'm on to you here. And you go, right, change that then, which is really helpful if you've got an early reader who can just put a note in the margin and say, and not in retrospect, but as they're reading to go, this is a flag for me. And then sometimes it's just a matter of as a writer of just tweaking that word or just tweaking, you've made it a little bit too obvious, but then you have to, as you say, leave breadcrumbs there as well. Nobody wants to get to the end and it's, you have to, and I think also you have to weave in enough characters. I don't know about you, but sometimes if you're reading a book and not necessarily a whodunit, but there's going to be a villain, it's quite obvious, or it's quite easy to spot them, or they'll give you three, and a writer might give you three characters, and one is the one that they want you to think it is, but it's not going to be that one, is it? One's the one, the obvious one that you're supposed to think, well, it's not that one, so it might be. But at the end of the day, if there's only three of them, it's going to be one of those three. So I think you do have to have enough in there without it getting too confusing. I worry sometimes that with the audiobook, because I know when I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and what I find difficult is if the plot gets quite complex, I think, who's that again? And if I'm reading a concrete book, I'll just flick back, oh yeah, that's him. Or oh, wait a minute, yeah, that's that. And I can't do that in an audiobook. And sometimes I get, if I've got a Julie and a Janet and a Jane, and which one? I need somebody with one eye, or I need somebody with, a beak. I need something to be really obvious who I'm reading about. So I do worry that I'm hoping, if anyone was on the audiobook, let me know that, but whether or not it is confusing, because there are quite a lot of characters.
Well, speaking of distinctive characters, when Four is Winter's brother, he's quite early in the story. He's sort of like a lifeboat for her, really.
Yeah.
They're together. Can you tell us a little bit about Four, his full name? I love how they call him Four, but it's
Harry Lewis Sykes the Fourth, I think, isn't it? I can't remember his surname. Is now I'm feeling terrible. No, Robbins, of course, Robbins. Harry Robbins. He was Sykes for so long in my head. It's sorry about that. Yeah, he's I think he's very much Winter's security blanket and Winter's ally in as you say, a lifeboat, as everything around was just crumbling and changing. I think anyone who's ever had, or any girl who ever had a brother, brothers are like that. They really, really are like that. I'm not sure sisters are quite the same, but they're special in a different way. But a brother it's an amazing relationship, and it is very, very special. I do think with Four and Winter, there's almost a reversal of this tradition that tends to be the brother taking care of the sister, but they are twins, so there is that, I suppose, that parity, that equality that isn't there always with a sibling of different ages.
When they go to live with their gran, who's lovely, but she's past it. She can't take them on. Dog comes to visit, and he's wonderful to begin with, isn't he? He's because he's out on his own. He's in the UK. He's on a mission to bring them back to Australia. Writing that memory of Dog early on, that's sort of the best of him, isn't it? That's when he's really shining.
Yeah, he is. But he's also, again, it's what they're looking for. And he's this exotic's probably not the right word, but he's this exciting, everybody loves an uncle, don't they? He's this exciting man. He's carefree, he's barefoot, he's on his toe, which is just ridiculous in York.
Yeah.
And he just sweeps in, and he's every kind of fun. And in fact, there's a scene where at Christmas, when they're back in when they're in WA, and he is saying how shit he thinks England is a bit. He sort of bags Yorkshire a bit, and she's very hurt by that quite inside, because she's thinking, hang on a minute, you didn't mention any of the the nice things you did, and you seem to like it well enough when you were there. So there's sort of that beginning of that duplicity of dog, I suppose, there. But yeah, they're so excited to see him, even without knowing that he's actually, I suppose, in a way, their lifeline.
And in going to the contrast between Dog, so when they meet Dog in the UK, they're outside in the snow playing with him, like, and they're freezing, but it doesn't matter. Then they come to Australia where it is stiflingly hot, incredibly bright. Everything is strange and weird, and then they rattle up the highway, in a car with a dog to a very strange property that's just, there's a big patch of burnt grass. This is incredibly disorienting. Yeah, Winter's also captivated by it.
Yeah, and again, it's back to, I suppose, kids knowing that they don't really have a say in it at all, and she's just going with it. I suppose as much as she, I mean, her at the beginning they say they all love Nancy more. They, the nobody makes loose toast. They all love their mother more, and I suppose she is. It's not that she doesn't miss Lou, but he's not who he was. He's no good to her at the moment. He's no good to them really at the moment. And she sees that. And she sees that Gran can't cope. And this is the next step. I work in a school where we have a lot of kids that come from the UK, a lot of families that relocate. And the parents will come, not being awful, but you get a lot of, oh, it's hot, it's so hot. The kids never, I don't think I've ever heard a kid complain about the heat, never, ever, or the cold. We'll be the ones that are saying, don't you want to put a jacket on? Aren't you cold? Geez,
Yeah,
aren't
my
your legs cold?
no,
But
no.
they don't, and they're not used to it. It's okay saying they don't feel the heat, but or they don't feel the temperature like we do. But these are kids who've had 4 or 5 or 6 winters, UK winters, and then suddenly they're here and they never complain about it. It's so I don't think that's something that I think she notes that everything's very different, but it's better. It's undeniably better if you take out the missing the family, but there's no one for her to miss because they haven't been there. No one's really been there for her
Yeah.
except for.
And also she and Four hold on to memories of their mother. They there's a very sad scene where Lou burns all of the photographs and the letters, but they manage to save a few.
Mm.
Lou's depth, the depth of his grief is immense, but in that frame, you only see it as, he's grieving it. There's much more intricacy to that that's revealed later on. But that severance of memory is a real theme here, isn't it? That it's that physical destruction of evidence, I suppose, of what that life was before. But they were
Yeah.
able to grasp some of it. Uh, when she's remembering back to this, is she able to, I don't know, take any comfort in that? In having those, in remembering that, no, I did try to preserve those good core memories.
I think she would have, and I think the fact that she did preserve them, and because she has the story, she had Nancy's, or they have Nancy's stories. They have the roundabouts of those photos. So I think she talks about the fact that you've got the photo, but she can see everything around those photos as we can. If we, the reason I suppose we love photos so much is that you can show somebody a photo and they'll see that square of whatever was going on. But when you were there, it's all there, isn't it? You see the whole picture, the whole 360, you smell the everything. And the stories that Nancy told them in bed at night painted that. So she goes back to those stories, those memories again and again. She only has a handful of them because they're not hers, but she does go back to them again and again. And I think sometimes with grief, with that immense grief, there is destruction. There is, people do get rid of things. They'll get rid of, just empty the wardrobe. And there's other people that won't, and they'll leave everything in for years and years and years. But there is that reaction, very real reaction to grief, is just get, and Lou turned to the bottle. So Lou was, by that, he's sozzled by that point. It was the only thing, because I mean, what does he say? Because when he's only got the hangover to think of, and to imagine that's the only thing he's trying to drink to forget.
Bell's Scotch whiskey. I love whiskey, and Bell's is not great.
Shit one, I know. There was a bit of research in that one too.
Why that one?
I
Uh,
think sometimes, you have to be careful when you're writing as well, not to become, it can be quite self-conscious. And sometimes you'll read a writer and they'll talk about music they're listening to, or I don't know, something, and you can tell it's them, but they're, which is great if it is you, or if there's elements of you in that character. But I'm not Lou, so I'm not going to pick, Lou's not going to drink what I drink. So I needed to seek out. I mean, I worked in a bar long enough to know that Bell's Scotch whiskey's
yeah,
bottom. stuff, you know. But even, you know, with the art, with Harry's artwork, I have a friend of mine who's an artist in the UK, and I sent him passages and said, I just need to read this and see if it rings true. Can you give me some influences? I've got these ones. Can you give me a couple more? And he was fantastic with that. And yeah, he was great with the art.
Now we mentioned Harry, let's talk him because let's talk about him.
Yeah.
When we first meet Harry, actually, you've got a passage picked out that you could read for us. Would you like
Oh,
to read
am I
for?
reading that one? I thought I was
Yeah,
reading the Paul
the other
Craig.
one. No, no.
Okay, I'm going to get onto it. Wait a sec. All right, I'll do that while you ask your question. Go for it.
You on the hop. But can you tell us a little bit about? We'll just set Harry up for us because he is the patriarch of the property that we are now
Yeah.
shifting narrative to.
I think Harry's almost a metaphor for Australia
Mm.
in for winter when she arrives, when she's young. He's brash, he's louder than she's used to. He's bare-chested and barefooted. And he's just a big, loud, he's quite obnoxious, really, in a way. I've heard him described as a misogynist, and I wouldn't call him a misogynist. I think he doesn't hate women. He just thinks he's better than women, but he thinks he's better than everybody, really. And it's not even that he's going to jump in and argue that point with you, but it just is a fact, and it's just you need to just accept that because this is who I am, and I describe him as he's a thy will be done kind of person. It's done. This is my will be done, you know. That's just Harry. I think later on in the book, I think in the second half of the book, he's more of a metaphor for winter's past. He's unyielding, he's complicated and looming. But yeah, he's a very strong character. I liked writing Harry. I really enjoyed his dialogue. I really do enjoy doing dialogue, and Harry's was probably my favorite. The way he interacted with everybody around him, and his just this dismissiveness to him that was just consumed everything. Just was so overbearing.
That's a great way to describe him. Yeah, my will be done.
Yeah, yeah, he is.
Crackles. Yeah. Or would you share a passage of him with us in your
Oh
voice?
God.
It's an
I'm
audio. This is the Louise Wolhuter version.
don't. You know, when they first said they were doing an audiobook, I thought, do you know what? I reckon I could do this. I've told this story before. I apologize if you've heard it. So I thought, I reckon I could do an audiobook. I bet they pay that. I'll do that myself. And so I set my phone up and I thought, I'll just do a little trial. I think I read a page and I was like, God, that's exhausting.
It's
And it was
exhausting.
terrible. And my voice is just, nah, 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 nah. I was absolutely rubbish. So serious, hats off to the people that do audiobooks. They're very good at what they do. I'm rubbish. So that's my setup for forgive my rubbish voice.
Take it away, Louise.
Okay. So we're meeting Harry for the first time. The twins are meeting Harry for the first time. They've already met Gabe the night before. We met our grandfather in the morning when we wandered into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and overwhelmed, and disappointed that Father Christmas had not been. He was taller than any man I'd ever seen, as tall as any of the door frames in the house, and wider at the top than at the bottom. His shirt hung unbuttoned, and his white hair was thick all over and hung past his ears. He wore blue jersey shorts that were split up one side, and he was quite a bit older than Nanny. Four slipped himself behind me, and our grandfather pretended not to see him. Winter, I'm guessing, he said. They call me Win, or Winnie, I told him, and he appeared to consider it. Well, I don't much care for the days of the world, he said. So what would you like me to call you? Winnie is fine. Four said. Well, you can call me Harry. He winked at us and was readying to say something else, but Gabe came running in before he could. He was shorter than he'd seemed when crouched by my bed in the middle of the night. The nails on his big toes were painted pink, and he wore a blue and yellow guernsey so long it looked like a dress. Did you hear the thunder in the night? He asked us. Did you hear it crash and bang? I'll bet there was lightning. I'll bet we'd have seen lightning if we'd gone down to the beach. Harry nodded and took his toast away without a plate. Merry Christmas, Four and I called after him, minding Gran's manners. Yeah, that too, he called back. His strides were long, and he soon disappeared along a path beyond the woodshed. He'll paint till lunchtime, Gabe said. He was bouncing between Four and me, seeming to want an introduction. Gabe, this is Four. Four, this is Gabe. It seemed unnecessarily formal, but Gabe stuck his hand out and Four took it. Hi. Have you met my mum yet? Gabe asked us. They had their own house along the path behind the boat shed. You can come and visit, he said. sounding so thrilled that I wondered whether anyone had ever been to see him there before. She'll be along later, he said. She's having a sleep in. In the meantime, he made us all toast spread thick with butter. Do you like Vegemite? He asked. We'd never tried it. Just a smudge then, he said. Mo says sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. She's doing the seafood, he explained as if we'd asked. We found Nanny shelling prawns in an old sink set into a table near the beach, where fish were scaled and filleted and scraps were swilled down the drain with buckets of salt water. A thick corrugated hose ran from the plug hole and emptied onto the sand like someone throwing up. Can we help? It was Gabe who asked. I really didn't want to.
Thank you, Louise. I think you could read. That was a page. That also introduces Gabe to us, and Gabe's wonderful. So he's sort of Winter's partner in crime. He's someone who helps her to figure out what's really going on in Australia, or at least observe the adult world a little more sharply. Can you tell us a little bit about Gabe?
Gabe, I think honestly, I think Gabe is a little bit Dill from To Kill a Mockingbird. Do you remember Dill, the next door?
Yeah,
I think Gabe's a little bit Dill. I didn't intend that at the time, but looking on him now, I think there's a little bit of Dill in Gabe. Gabe's we needed another child. I needed another child to add something. I needed a child for the children because otherwise they're not going to hear what they need to hear because the adults, particularly the story I was trying to tell, there was going to be a lot going on with the adults that the children were not going to be party to. So Gabe is really there as a bit of a conduit, as an interpreter almost. But yeah, he's his own character. I had to be very careful not to make in creating Gabe, I suppose, in not making him and Ford too alike. They needed to be very separate people. So I hope that worked. But yeah, Gabe, I'm very fond. People are very fond of Gabe. One of the questions I get the most, and I'm sure that's the one people are holding on to, it pertains to Gabe. So if you do have a Gabe question that's a spoiler, please send me it privately.
Well, Louise, we've got 20 minutes left. Libby's an hour, and it always seems like a long time, and it's not. I'll just read you a few comments here. So, Dorota, who's joining us tonight from Libby, saying Maddie Withington really brings the characters to life. I love the audiobook too. She's your narrator.
Yeah, she also did. Maddie also did read for my first book, An Afterlife for Rosemary Lamb. There are three narrators in that, and Maddie read Rosemary Lamb in that. So that was really nice to have that continuity.
It's nice. Did that come through a request from you, or was that just happenstance?
Or? No. The third when the first audiobook was done for the first book, they actually sent me little sound bites of like little readings from the actors they were considering, and that was mind blowing. That was amazing to have somebody playing because it was first person narratives, to have somebody actually, you can hear the voice of this character that you've created that doesn't exist is amazing. I can only imagine what having a Netflix or a movie would be. That would be insane. But after that, Maddie was fantastic in that. And then they said, look, unless you have an objection, we'd like to run with her again. And of course, I wasn't going to object. She was fabulous. My only concern with the audiobook on this one particularly was that the pronunciation was done right because, as I said before, it is my hometown. And I think if you go on the internet and ask it how to pronounce it, it will tell you Harrogate, and it's not Harrogate, it's Harrogate. And it's Knaresborough, not Canarasborough. And there was lots that could go horribly wrong. So I kept and I still do when I write, I have an open file. Anything that comes up that maybe I'll just stick it across there as I'm writing. So it's there at the end.
Now, we're getting a lot of pressure for a spoiler question. So I will put it out there. Charlotte's saying, please answer
I know the question, Charlotte, I can see the question you're asking.
Any objections from anyone?
Well, it's going to spoil it a bit. That's all. What I worry about is that it's not the people who are here today. It's the people that might come across this in the future, and we've just ruined the book for them. That's my concern. I'll be honest with you. Although I know it's a book club, maybe we could have like an extra 5 minutes like everybody at the end, the last 5 minutes, if they can go, and we just don't put that on the recorded version. Is that an option?
Let's do that. I'm sure we can.
Is that all right, Charlotte?
Tim Landrigan saying no spoilers, please. So Tim, I will do a
brilliant
5-minute warning, and I'll say, look, spoilers from here on. And if you
say goodbye, you drop off. But you can pick the question before that so that we can decide who gets the book. And then the people who haven't read it yet can drop off. And then if we don't put the last 5 minutes on the recorded version, is that okay?
Totally. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Charlotte's happy. Look, thanks, Charlotte. I also saw my cousin's listening to this. Hi, Christine. She's in maybe
I
even with my auntie Mimi.
No, no worries, no worries. Well, Louise, can you take us maybe back to the crafting of Shadows of Winter Robins? Where did the idea actually come from for you? It's an exploration of memory, but you know, where did these characters come from, and where did your desire to take them on this journey come from?
Um, it sort of it doesn't write itself, but the story does unwrap sort of it's created, I suppose, in the first draft. I started with, I think I said before, I wanted to write about a character coming. I wanted to bring them here from the UK as a child. The first section I wrote was that I hadn't quite decided what hadn't decided what any of the secrets would be or what the looking back on would look like. I wanted them to live. I needed to bring them into a sort of a remote setting. I toyed with it being an island. I thought at one point of it being an island, but we don't really have islands. There's not many. I mean, the islands over here are, you've got the Abrolhos, and to my knowledge, there's nobody really living up there too much. And I don't know it, so it would have been too hard to be convincing. So the first part I wrote was actually them arriving. So the line when she gets off the plane and I think it's we stepped off that plane and into a heat we had not known outside a kitchen. And that was the first thing I wrote for the whole book was that. And I thought, well, I start there. And I think Thomas Harris has a great line. He says you begin with what you know and then you write around that, or you write what comes before and what comes after. And I would subscribe to that. So I
Right.
started with that, and then there was the drive, and we're up there, then we've sort of got the type of thing, and then I bounced back, and then I had the idea of dogs, women coming, and not being sort of sure whose women they would be. And yeah, I sort of built around that. So it's created it. You sort of, I think you weave a story. I don't think it's not linear in the writing. I think it's like, I suppose, winding a ball of wool, and that you know is going to be unraveled. So you're raveling, but you're raveling it with the understanding of it's going to be done almost backwards, and you have to put things in at the places you want them to fall out. And sometimes you have to go back and you have to unravel to put something else into it. There's a lot of, it's a really complex process, I think, writing. There's a lot of post-it notes involved to remind you to put things in, to insert them back. Because if you go back and forth, you'd never get anywhere. Or you'd overwrite the first bit because you just keep going back to the beginning and it would just get horribly overwritten. But the idea for that, the secret, what becomes the secret, what is the I suppose the part that she's not seeing as a child, that she's looking back on and pulling out as an adult, that really evolved as the book went on. And I do tend to, I think I have had complaint, well, because I do read my Goodreads, it's quite exciting. And a couple of people said it's too far-fetched, but I like a little bit of far-fetched. I get a bit disappointed if I've invested hours in a book and it gets to the end and I feel, is that it? Is that all this was about? Somebody stole a sock. That's a terrible climax. I do tend to push it. I am a little bit far-fetched, and I realize, but
I
yeah.
like that point. I mean, life can be pretty bloody far-fetched. I mean,
Yeah, it can be. It can be. And I think I'm very interested. I think I say all my books, I've only got two, but there are more coming. I'm very interested in people being different than what you think they are, and that what you see of somebody is what they allow you or what they want you to see. And their behavior behind the scenes can be very, very different. And I find that quite exciting in a really twisted way. But just this duplicity of people, and the idea that the local guy who's looks dodgy as could be the guy who's actually saving lives, and the person who's really well dressed and incredibly well spoken and very well liked and
yeah,
thought of is the guy who's got the
the
sex
dark,
slave under the bed or
yeah.
something. It's so yes, yeah, I like that, and that was always going to be a part of every book, was going to be that who are the good ones and who are the bad ones, and is it that definitive? I mean, bad people can do really nice things, and nice people can do really shitty things.
And I'd like to ask you about the cover as well, because the title and the cover, I came into your book cold. I didn't know what to expect at all. And I love that the the cover is also maybe part of that, not a fake out, but like that you don't know what to expect. I was like, is this a thriller? Is this literary? Is this crime? Is this fantasy? What's going on? And it's such a beautiful cover. And the more I read of the book, the more I kept looking at the cover and going, yes, this really deepens everything. Did you like the cover? Did you have a
I
hand?
love the cover. The cover actually won the Australian, what does
Really?
that cover?
What?
It was the cover of the year. It was the contemporary fiction, I think, cover of the year.
And
Amy
it's
O'Dowd was the artist that did it. But yeah, I absolutely love it. I really do. I mean, the fact that you don't know what it is when you pick it up probably
hmm.
doesn't help sales that well.
It's intriguing. That's why I liked it. It was like this really stands out.
I
This is
also go into books blind and I like it better. But I think if you went into that blind and it wasn't your kind of book, you'd be horrible. You're horrified at certain parts. I had the nicest, not the nicest, but one of the best things I read was a reviewer called it deliciously unsettling. And I think if they ever did a reprint, I'd love to just have deliciously unsettling on the front. I think that would be a nice grab line.
well, you have a very nice question here from Annie Demoncho, who's your stablemate at
Mhm.
Ultimo, who's our guest for next month's Libby, actually. She's saying, when you ask for one line to describe the story, what is it? What's your pithy line?
Gosh. Oh, Annie, that's a really difficult question. I'm going to cross at you now. Um, I don't know. You should tell me. You've just read it. One line.
I like
Gosh.
deliciously
Can we just
unsettling.
go with deliciously unsettling?
Yeah, let's go with that. That's fantastic. Well, there's some, and Charlotte Vince is also saying, I picked the book up at an op shop because it caught my eye. I'm
Mm.
happy I did. So, yeah, yeah,
Op shops are great, aren't they? I
yeah,
love op shops.
yeah.
I've found so many writers that I probably wouldn't have, to be honest, invested in a brand new book because I don't know them. And you get them and you give it a go, and then yeah, I love op shops. They're fabulous.
It's when you know you've made it, right? It's like, yes, they're able.
Well, do you know that's so true? I found Rosemary lamb in an op shop, and it was such a moment for me. I was so excited, and I got had my daughter keep watch. She's an op shop fiend like me, and I wrote this big message in it and stuck it back on the shelf, and I left it. And then a couple of months later, I saw the lady who'd picked it up had given me a nice 5-star rating on Goodreads. They do count these ratings, and she'd written a really lovely review, but she'd put in it, by the way, and she had been the person who'd picked this copy up in the
Brilliant. Okay.
Winton Road Salvos. Isn't that great?
That's very cool. That's very cool. Well, speaking of books, there's a lot behind you. Are there, were there any particular writers or works or even other kinds of artworks that helped you in crafting this very intricate, unsettling story?
No, I deliberately don't read. I try not to read the genre I'm writing, and which is while I'm writing, I suppose. Once I've got the story down, and then you're just editing, it's not distracting. I worry that something's going to eke its way in, and you also worry that you're going to read something that
Mm.
you've done, and you're like, oh, now it's going to look like I'm. But although you'd rather find out now than when it's been published and it looks like you've properly ripped them off. But no, I don't read to get into the zone or into the mood. I listen to music sometimes if I'm editing, but I tend to write in the mornings and then I'll read in the evenings.
It's different, but well, thank you. Emma Bliss is saying it was a book club book for me. I
Oh,
don't often get the books as I don't have as much time to read as I like, but this one really jumped out at me. I didn't understand why, but bought it anyway. So glad I did. Yeah,
thanks, Emma.
your skin. Yeah. Now, I reckon let's go 5 more minutes before spoilers. Okay. So if you have a burning question that's non-spoilery for Louise, please jump in now. I'm just gonna let my dog in because he is bashing the door down. Um,
Oh, yes, Peter, still, please. I'm reading the things. Peter, yes, please get a copy of the book. I'm looking at this. See? Deliciously unsettling. Everybody likes it.
like deliciously unsettling.
Now I
Okay.
tried to scroll and I've highlighted things. I don't know what I've done. I've done something terribly wrong. Oh, there we go.
Well, Louise, I guess a good question to ask is, what are you reading at the moment? What can you recommend to everybody tuned in tonight? Because after reading Shadows of Winter Robins, we need something else.
Yeah. I don't know if I've only just started it. It might not be great, but I mean, it seems very nice. I'm reading, I had to get it out of my bedroom because I'd forgotten and I knew you were going to ask the question, but I just started The Chilling by Riley James. I just
Ah,
started that. I'm not very far in. Look, there's my bookmark. That's my paper book at the moment. My audio books at the moment, I'm just finishing a Long Island by, I can never say this, Colm Toibin, Toibin,
Yeah, yeah.
which is great. I'd listened to Brooklyn, which is if you're in up for an audiobook, Brooklyn is read by Saoirse Ronan, and it's fantastic. But the one that the lady who's reading this is good too. And I'm also I just started a little book called is it Locust Summer? Just started that.
Oh, thank you.
I'm enjoying that one. That's good. And I was going to read I thought I was going to read oh, what's it called? Oh, I went to the was it Alex Dork? Oh,
Well, yeah,
I've got a
uh,
gun in my, is it Bulletproof or something? What's the
it's,
place called?
it's just come out.
It has.
Gunpowder Creek.
Gunpowder Creek. I bought
Yeah,
it last week. I went to his launch last week and I bought
yeah,
it, but then
yeah.
I was going to read it and my husband swiped it, so he's reading that at the moment.
That's pretty good. Thank you.
Can
And
I just say, sorry, Tony said here, thank you, Tony, because Tony said he started it as an audiobook but had to go back and read the hard copy as he got initially lost by the audio. So there you go. Thank you. So that was an answer to my question with the, it gets a bit confusing sometimes if you, yeah.
oh, well, that's pretty good. Yeah. And finally, I guess suppose a final question is, are you a plotter or a pantser? Because you answered that kind of before in that you're weaving it. How much planning did you do?
I
Um,
don't plan a lot for the first draft. My first draft is notebooks. I just think my way through notebooks, and then I'll go back and highlight. I'll go back and read, and if there's anything that's workable that I'm going to keep, I'll highlight it, and then that gets typed into the what I call my skeleton draft, which is, I mean, it will be a whole however many chapters. I'll aim for about 40, 50 chapters, but one chapter might just say they go to Australia, and that's it. That's all I'm going to write for that, and then I'll sort of I build up on that. So insofar I'm creating a plan, I suppose. I have a very tight timeline, but I won't do that until about draft three. But no, I think it's you have an idea, I think, of where the book's going to go. Quite often I'll know what the ending, what the final line's going to be. I might be in the shower and go, I've just got the
right.
last
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
I might have the ending, but I won't know how I'm going to get there. And I'll change it a lot as well. I'll change. Winter changed quite a lot, particularly the ending that changed a lot. But sometimes I think if you're trying to work part of the story and it's not working, you're finding it really hard. It's because it's not right, and you just need to get away. If you're trying to kill somebody off and you can't figure out how you're going to kill them, they're not supposed to die. Just go around it. Go around the puddle. So no, I don't think I'm a plotter or a pantser. I think I'm a bit of both.
That's a good one. We've got 5 minutes to go, so I'm going to let's select our winner. I reckon Charlotte Vincent. There were some really nice observations that allowed us to go off on some nice good tangents. So Charlotte,
Cool.
I'll chuck my this is my email address in the chat. So just if you email me, I'll then connect you to the good people at Libby, who will then connect you to the good people at Ultimo, who will connect you to the good people at Australia Post.
You could just connect us straight to me. It's fine, and I'll.
Yeah.
It's coming from me.